Hello everyone and welcome to GDPR General Data Protection Regulation webinar for AIESEC members. GDPR information is important for all the members to have in AIESEC because no matter of your function or your position, we all have access to personal data of our EPs. So what you will learn during this webinar. First, what is GDPR? Second, why do we need it? And third, what do you actually need to do to make it happen? So the purpose of GDPR is to give control back of the data for the person whose personal data we are processing. Any business inside the EU or organization who deals with customer data has to implement GDPR. So we should not see it as an obstacle, but more like a way to boost the trust in people that they have in us. And as you see, violating GDPR can have huge financial consequences, depending on the size and the violation of the size of the organization and violation of the GDPR. So GDPR sounds so complicated. No, we can make it simple, and we should keep it simple so people can actually understand what is it about. And there are three things that you should know. First, when we are talking about data subject, who is it? So it's the person whose data we are processing. What is personal data? So you will learn what kind of data we are talking about when we talk about personal data, and what are the things that we should do when we are processing the data. Here you can see some examples of what kind of data categories we have. And you see already that there are some information that we already collect when people sign into AIESEC.org. For example, name, date of birth. We need to know this because our projects are targeted for 18 to 30-year-old young people. Phone number and email so we can contact them, and academic background and professional background in some cases if it's required to be able to apply for the project. Some other more sensitive categories of personal data should not be collected unless in real need. For example, criminal data we have a legal right to collect because in our IGV projects, if the project is about working with underaged, the Finnish law requires that there should be criminal report, and this makes us authorized to actually collect it if needed. There are three reasons why we can collect data. First is consent, so if the person agrees to it, so for example when they sign into AIESEC.org, they automatically at the same time agree that we will use this data that they will sign in with. Legal obligations, so if there are, for example, passports or visa documents, we need to have it in order to ensure that our operations are legal. And if we need some information to make contracts, this is one legal reason to collect the data. What kind of principles we have in GDPR? Firstly, we should not collect more data than we actually need. And the data should be kept up to date. So if there's a EP who wants to change something of their data, they have the right to do it. Accountability. So because we are controlling people's personal data, we are also accountable to use it right. We should storage the data only the time that we need it, and only to use it for the purposes that we agree with the data subject. And we should not give the data for any third parties. And also we should be really transparent what kind of data we collect, so the data subject would always know what kind of data they have given, what kind of data we have from them, and so on. So what are the rights of the data subject? Firstly, they are right to be informed that this is happening, and for example, you can read more about our privacy policy from AIESEC.fi, and you can find the privacy policy from the bottom right corner of the website from the first page. The data subject would have right to access the data, so if they sign into AIESEC.org, they have access to their data and they can edit it anytime. They have the right to rectification, so if there's some detail is wrong or unupdated, they have the right to request us to update the data also for the things that we have possibly used outside of the AIESEC.org. They have the right to object, so nowadays the people have an opportunity to delete their AIESEC.org account. So if they delete it, we no longer have their data, and they have the right to do so. Right to erasure. So there can be some reasons that they want some data to be erased. For example, a passport copy or a visa copy or something like this. And depending on the situation, we might have to delete the data and proceed with the customer's requests. Right to restriction of processing. So if there is a process going on and they suddenly decide that they don't want to go on with it, they have a right to do so, and then from that moment onward we cannot proceed with the data. But these are in case of there is like a legal reason behind, we can still continue processing. Right to data portability. So for example, you can create a AIESEC CV in AIESEC.org. So if our EPs do that, they have a right to download the CV with their own data and use it for other purposes. Automated decision making. So in case there's a decision in our platforms made automatically, for example, let's say that the account would be deleted in 2 months if not used. So in this case, the data subject would have to be informed that this account will be deleted automatically, and there would have to be an option for them to stop it happening. So always the human influence will have to be allowed if they want so. They will have a right to have a compensation in case we violate the GDPR, naturally, and the amount size of the compensation will depend on the size of the violation and also the amount of transactions that we have. Actions towards compliance. So what do we actually need to do to make this happen? So there is a list of do's that you can actually start doing now in your everyday life, and a list of don'ts that we should not do in order to make sure that GDPR is implemented. And you can check this list from the PDF file from the GDPR material. And I hope that you learned something about GDPR through this webinar, and now you should have the tools to know what you should actually do to make it happen. Thank you.